Hello, welcome to the Essential Oils Safety class for beginners. I am today going to discuss general safety, oils to use extreme caution or care with, groups of people to use extreme caution and care with, as well as top three mild oils, and then the other top six or seven oils that are also considered mild that can be used with the above mentioned for very special groups, as well as people you might think might be sensitive, etc. So before we start today's lesson, tomorrow's lecture will be on detailing of how to measure essential oils insofar as concentration. How do we measure that? What is the best equipment to use? For example, 1, 2, 3, or 5 millimeter pipettes, or do we want to get more exact and use a tare scale with little holding trays or beakers that are, for example, 1 milliliter, 5 milliliters, 10, 100, depending on how big of a blend and concentration of carry oil and so on and so forth. We have different glass beakers that we can use based on the size of what we are making. So that'll be tomorrow's lecture. As for today, general safety. So if we look at face and body, for general safety purposes, the face should never be more than 2% concentration. When you are working on the face, for one thing, the skin, face and neck skin is thinner, especially around the eye area. It's much more delicate. And you also have pathways nasal as well as oral, and then you have your eyes. And so you have to be very careful what gets in and around those areas, simply because you can take things in and it can be too much for those areas. For example, if you have too strong of a blend and you put it on your face, you're going to be smelling that all day long. If it travels, if it's too close in the eye area, it will travel and it will get into the eyes. So you do have to be careful with that. In commercial cosmetics, there are different formulations for face and eyes. Anything formulated for the eyes is going to be ophthalmologist tested, simply to conclude that it is safe if it accidentally does get in the eyes. So we have to consider that. If we are looking at body blends, and especially if looking for like massage blends, if some of you are massage therapists out there, or if you're doing an abhyanga, especially daily abhyanga on yourself, or if you're doing abhyanga on others, you definitely want your concentration to be about 1.1, 1.0, 1.5%, because again, it's going all over the body. So you have to consider that the entire body is getting massaged, and even up in the neck area, around the ears, on the head. And so you're going to be smelling that, and you're also getting a higher concentration because you're getting more oil and just more product on the body all the way around. So you want to be careful with that. If you are making body massage oils, you do want to consider that you should be using some very emollient blends that allow you to work the muscle without pulling the skin. That is number one. Do not pull skin. Most people do not want the elasticity of their skin. They don't want to feel stretched skin, and you don't want to cause more damage. You want to make things better. And if you're looking at daily abhyanga massage, you don't want to be pulling skin. The idea is that you're making the skin more healthy by doing this type of massage. And so your oil should be more emollient so you can really work with them. And also, so it really gets into the skin and really helps it to be more supple, more elastic, just healthier all the way around. So consider that with body massage. Emollient oils would be jojoba, sesame. If you want a very penetrating oil, grapeseed, but it should be mixed with a more emollient oil such as jojoba. You get the benefits of the grapeseed going deep, and then you have the emollients of the jojoba or the sesame. So oils to use extreme care with. So this is important. I think this is good for any beginner class. Any oils with high ketone content. So some common ones that we see out there are sage, common sage, or Salvia officinalis. Another one, rosemary camphor, which has got a high content of borneol. We have sweet wormwood, Artemisia annua. We also have lavandula stetches or lavender stetches. Those four are the ones that I can think of off the top of my head that have high ketone content. And one needs to be careful in how we apply. Another one would also be arborvitae or Thuja occidentalis. That also has a very, very alpha thujone and beta thujone high ketone contents. So yes, they have great properties to them, and a lot of people burn sage to clear an area, and it is very calming and relaxing, and it does clear away negativity, but you're not eating it, and you certainly aren't distilling it to the point that it's become a very, very concentrated oil. So we have to consider that. With sage, things like sage, wormwood, thuja, lavandula, stechus, rosemary, camphor, it should be in very trace amounts, highly, highly diluted, no more than 1%. If you're going to put it on the body. And there are some groups of people that should never have, access or be using these oils. And that is pregnant mamas, lactating mamas, any children whatsoever. And then also care must be taken with people with epilepsy. And I know there's the ketones are the big thing out there. Ketogenic diet for refractory epilepsy. It is very helpful. It does work. I can speak from experience, and they are burning ketones in the body. But it's under doctor's care. They convert into ketosis after 4 or 5 days in the hospital. So there is a lot of care taken to make sure that these people don't get very, very sick and potentially die. So there's a lot that goes into the ketogenic diet. And if any of these groups of people if you are working with any of these groups of people, you absolutely should avoid these oils. Particularly, once again, in trace amounts, they are very helpful. But, with a very, very seasoned aromatherapist who really knows what they're doing, it should be the ones working with these oils. Another group is the groups with methyl salicylate, which is an ester that turns when it goes through a process of acidification, which is very quick because all it takes is some water, and that it becomes an acid, and salicylic acid is what it becomes, and that is basically the component of aspirin. So you have to be very careful with wintergreen, cornmint, and yellow birch. They work great as an analgesic. They work much like aspirin, only I think they actually work a little better, and there's no stomach disorder. However, people that are on blood thinners or doing platelet therapy cannot use these oils at all. It will thin their blood too much, and they could wind up with a hemorrhagic stroke, which would, or if they cut themselves, just profuse bleeding, and that is utterly dangerous. So we don't want to mess around with that. And again, little children, no. Too risky. You don't want to do this. You really need to know your audience when you're working with these kinds of oils. I personally love wintergreen, cornmint, yellow birch, but I don't personally have any health problems. I don't have any bleeding issues. I'm not on blood thinners. I'm not on aspirin. But in looking at clients, it's very important to know what their medical history is before you even consider these oils. There's plenty of other oils that can work that really are going to cause very little harm in the long run. So the four main groups that one should be cautious with. And after attending Dr. Beck's lecture, I would most certainly agree. And these are important groups to know. One would be babies and children, babies 0 to 2, and then children 2 till they reach adulthood. And those on blood thinners and platelet therapy or high aspirin regimens. And then those with allergic responses, their immune system is really overly stimulated, and say they have peanut allergies or walnut allergies or gluten sensitivities or celiac disease. That's extreme. Anything like that. Or people who are strong Pitta Prakriti or Vikriti. So there's Pitta, very, very, very pronounced Pitta issues that are out of balance, or people that are just simply strong Pitta. So in looking at these four groups, if we look at babies 0 to 2 years old, don't treat them. They are off the list. Unless you are working closely with a pediatrician and the pediatrician says, rose and 1% concentration is safe for that baby, I am approving it, and they put it in writing, then you've covered yourself. Otherwise, do not work with babies 0 to 2 years old, period. I know they get exposed to a lot of other stuff, and I can name some top 10s that are probably wrecking their system right now. However, don't be the person that gives them essential oil and they go into some type of health crisis, and then everyone looks at you. It potentially was probably something else, but they're going to say it's the essential oil. So you have to be very careful. And then kids that are 2 to adulthood, which is 18, you should be very, very careful using only the mildest of oils, and they should be highly diluted, 1%, 2%. Be very, very careful on how you treat them. And the younger they are, you must exercise extreme caution. Obviously, when they get to 12 years old, 13 years old, 15 years old, they're getting into more of an adult body, but you should treat them with the same kind of caution that you would treat someone, that has health issues, because they are still growing, maturing, hormonal, their brain is still developing. You have to consider all of these things. Insofar as the people on blood thinners, high aspirin regimes or platelet therapy, do not treat them. That's Dr. Beck's advice, and I agree. Don't treat them. Anything could go wrong if you in any way dilute the medication. They could have an ischemic stroke because their blood gets too thick. If you over concentrate their medication, their blood gets too thin, they can have a hemorrhagic stroke. And so either one can be potentially fatal or cause life-changing results that they are just never the same again. And it becomes you don't even want to do that. You don't want to live with that. So do not treat those people. People with immune response. So they've got their immune system's on high alert. For whatever reason, they can't tolerate certain things. Best thing for these people is that the only mode should be either inhalation via diffuser, or it should be putting a drop of the oil on a cotton pad. And if you put a drop of the oil on the cotton pad, they may put it next to their nightstand or on the dresser in their room, to where they just get a little bit of the fragrance and it's not overwhelming. If you decide to do a diffuser because it's a thinner oil, then best to do 1 minute to start out with and see how they respond. And they can do that every day for several weeks. And if they come back to you and say, I'm not having an issue, my lungs aren't, I'm not producing histamines, I'm not choking, I'm not coughing, I don't need to whip out the EpiPen, then we could raise it to 2, maybe 3 minutes at a time for diffusion. And if they're not having a response, perhaps we can put that 1 drop on the little cotton pad and put it next to the pillow or underneath the pillow. They can tolerate a little bit more instead of it being on a nightstand or over on their dresser, where they're just kind of getting whiffs of it. So just be very cautious with those people, because the last thing you want to hear is like, I just couldn't breathe and I had to go to the hospital. So we want to be very, very sensitive to their needs. And then our final group is the high Pitta people. So we've got to consider that high pitta people are they have the Tichenor or the sharpness is just part of their constitution. Or if it's vitiated and pitta's way out of balance, they're still experiencing the same thing. So sharpness, anger, sensitivity, they've got a super sensitive smell and super sensitive hearing, and they just can't tolerate extremes of anything. And being a pitta person myself, I can tell you I have dog nose. I can smell anything. And when I was pregnant, I had shark nose. So I am super sensitive. I'm super sensitive to loud sounds. I don't like it either. I mean, when Dr. Beck in her lecture brought all of that up, it's like, wow, that kind of describes me in many cases. Am I 100% extreme pitta? No, there's other things going on, but I can tell you that my senses are on high alert, and certain types of touch and stuff like that can be very bothersome, or I just don't like it. And so speaking with that experience, yeah, I am too sensitive with smells and sounds and such, and vibrations and frequencies. So in knowing that and considering that, it's worth knowing that about your clients. Are they experiencing those sensitivities? We don't want to bombard them. We want to make sure that they are comfortable and happy, and will continue doing your protocol and not walk away from it because they're too disturbed by everything that's, they're overwhelmed on their senses and such. So we need to make sure of that. So let's consider that, and you can see if there's a pitta out of balance in the pulse, or after doing your assessments, you can definitely tell, like, well, this person is high pitta for sure. Oftentimes just visually, just seeing their movements and how they're doing and their focus and everything else, and just their certain characteristics, you might say to yourself, yeah, this person is definitely extreme pitta. So just consider that, and how you're going to practice on them. So in looking at that, let's look at the top three mild oils, which are Copaiba. Is number one. Number two is violet, and number three is iris. Three oils you wouldn't think that would be the most mildest of oils, but Copaiba is very nice. It is excellent for allergies, and it's non-invasive. The odor is gentle, and people with allergies could certainly, if they enjoyed the scent, Copaiba is definitely a candidate. For violet, is very soothing for heartache. I personally have used violet. I think it's great. I love violet. It's very uplifting, and turns out it's very helpful to rebalance Saddha Pitta. So if you notice that Saddha Pitta might be out of balance in the pulse, or they start explaining to you a lot of heartache and such, violet is a great uplifter, and it's very gentle. Iris, when we talk about the back and support, and then people with chronic back pain, iris turns out is a very big support for the back area, spinal area, and also good for people with chronic back pain. So for those people who would not be candidates for wintergreen or yellow birch or cornmint, um, iris would be a great choice um, to help them if they're having chronic back pain. So that's a consideration as well. Other mild essential oils: lavender, Roman chamomile, German chamomile, frankincense, the Serrata variety, um, as well as myrrh, rose, and sandalwood. So in looking at all of those could be, except for the thick ones, could be diffused for a minute, or the thicker ones, you're going to put a drop on a cotton pad, because obviously you cannot diffuse thick oils like rose. Myrrh is resinous and sticky. You're not going to diffuse that. So yes, those are some of the ways that we can practice safety with essential oils. And we just have to be thoughtful. Having a book like Tisserand, having a book from the books from Battaglia, the books from Schnaubelt, these are all helpful in assessing what are the bioactive chemotypes. What, especially with Tisserand's book, you know, what is the toxicity? What are the contraindications? Those are great reference books that if you even have a question, you say to yourself, should I be doing this or not? Let me consult this oil and Tisserand's book. If it's a very, very exotic oil, there are books out there that are dedicated literally to profiling and outlining really exotic oils that aren't seen much on the market, but they are there. And so that is I have actually have that book, and it's worth considering for some of the extremely rare oils. So you needn't worry. And then what I would like you to do, students, is to read up on these top 10 mild essential oils. Look at the bioactive chemotype profiles. See if there's some common denominators. And we will also be talking about that insofar as blending in our next lecture as well. Not only just concentrations, but if you choose to do blending, which I would not recommend for the 4 groups at first, because you don't, if they have a reaction, you don't want to guess, well, which one of the 3 was it? You want to be confident, like, well, I gave them Roman chamomile and they had a reaction. We will avoid that. So for those 4 groups, let us not get fancy. Let's keep it simple. But outside those 4 groups, or if you see that, inside those 4 groups there is tolerance over time, then we can talk about blending and what are the properties of best practices for blending. And based on, some of the greats out there, like Dr. Hotzel, when he talks about, the blending of plants and how we create synergy, or when we look at Dr. Stryker and we talk about, what would be the best way to blend, looking at plant families and plant parts that have been distilled, and compatible bioactive chemotypes and such. So there's several things that we can do to make a really nice blend, as well as using our intuition. So and practice will eventually hopefully lead to perfection, but we will discuss that in our next class. So with that, I will leave you guys to do your homework, and I will see you guys next lecture. Okay, bye.